Okay, in this lesson we're going to use some concept of mental math to do some multiplication. We're going to look at nice numbers and we're going to look at the distributive property. The first question you ask yourself might be, well, what is a nice number? Well, what we're talking about with nice numbers are essentially are numbers that end in zero, or two zeros or three zeros that allow us to just ignore the zero and multiply smaller numbers together. One fact you need to make sure you understand is if you multiply two numbers together that ends in zeros, you can ignore the zeros until the end and just add back on the number of zeros you ignored. A great example would be something like 60 times 700. Well, ignore the zeros, so ignore three zeros. 6 times 7 equals 42, and then just add back on the three zeros. The reason for this is that it's really 6 times 10 and 7 times 10 times 10, and so you end up being 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000, so it's really 6 times 7 times 1,000. Okay, one other fact is you can use the reverse of distributive property to kind of help yourself. So for instance, 34 times 23 might be a little bit overwhelming to try to do in your head, but if you realize that 23 could just be written as 20 plus 3, and then using the distributive property, you can do 34 times 20 plus 34 times 3. Well, 34 times 20 is pretty easy because you use this property, which is multiplying 34 times 2 to get 680, and then you do add the 0 to get 680, and then 34 times 3, that might be something you're not great at in your head, and you're going to have to learn to multiply in your head, but 34 times 3, just imagine getting 33 times 3, which is 99, and adding 1 to that to get to 102. So then 680 plus 102 is an easy sum, you get 782. So it's a nice trick to being able to solve these problems in your head. So let's do some examples, and I'm going to write a little bit here, but in general I'm just going to show you what you should be thinking. Okay, 42 times 30. Well, there's two ways you could do this in your head. One way would be if you can in your head do 42 times 3. Well, 42 times 3 is the same as, if you can do that in your head, that's great, but if not, think about it as 3 times 40 plus 2. Well, 3 times 40 is just 120. 3 times 2 is 6, and so that equals 126. And then at the beginning of the problem, we ignored that 0, so the answer is 1260. Another way you could have done that is done 40 times 30 to get 1200, and then 2 times 30 to get 1260. Okay, example 2 is just a direct application of ignoring zeros, so we're going to ignore 3 zeros, and then we got 12 times 13. Hopefully you know 12 times 13. You should really learn your multiples up beyond 12. But if you don't know that yet, you could have also done 12 times 12 to get 144, and then you got one more 12 to add on to that to get to 13, so it's 156. And so our product here is 156, and then we ignored 3 zeros, 1, 2, 3. So 156,000 is our answer. Example 3 is a good application of the distributive property one because we can do 45 times 10 plus 2. 45 plus 10 is just 450. 45 times 2 is just 90, which you can do 45 plus 9 is 54, so it's 540. Again, I'm writing this out, but you should be thinking about how you could do this in your head or maybe with just a little bit of writing. Example 4, this is kind of similar to what we've been doing. You can do distributive property on this, and it doesn't matter how you decide to do distributive property. I'm going to do 28 times 20 plus 3. Well, 28 times 20 is 28 times 2, which is 56, and adding a 0. So I know I've got 560. And then 28 times 3, well, that one you might not know, so you just have to be able to kind of figure it out. One way to do it would be 30 times 3 is 90, so subtract 2 times 3 to get 84. And so you get 560 plus 84, which just equals 644. 36 times 52, same idea. Change it to 36 times 50 plus 2. You may not know 36 times 50, but 36 times 5 is pretty easy to do. You can actually even just picture the algorithm in your head. That gives you 180, and then you add a 0 to get 1800. And then 36 times 2 is just 72, which gives you 1872. Mental math just takes a lot of practice. You know, the great thing about mental math is it's mental. You don't need a piece of paper. You don't need an iPad. All you need to do is think of two numbers and try to multiply them together. I'm going to reveal a little bit of my nerdiness, and that I used to multiply numbers together from license plates when I was driving, or divide things. But it just takes practice, and it's something that can be very useful in math tests and math competitions.